And for today's purposes, the word stewardship is the intentional and responsible planning and management of entrusted resources. I'm going to say that one more time. The intentional and responsible planning and management of entrusted resources. I have to tell you that as I stand before you today, that I feel a little nervous. My stomach feels a little queasy. Not so sure that I can blame the lunch that we are having today. Lunch is actually pretty good. I would like to take you back to another time in my life, another place, when my stomach was this queasy and I was this nervous. I was a 15-year-old boy. I grew up in the beautiful paradise island of Sri Lanka. It's teardropped, it's shaped like a teardrop, beautiful sandy beaches, tea-covered mountains, well known for its blue sapphires and rubies, known for its spices like cardamoms and cloves and cinnamon and nutmeg, ingredients that are used in kitchens all over. I had just won an American Field Service scholarship as a 15-year-old. I was going to come to the United States and live with a family, with an American family, and be able to go to school for one whole year. I had illusions of John Travolta. Dan Johnson. Unfortunately, it was not to be. I did something very careless and stupid at my school. My ball boy school suspended me from school. The American Field Service found out about it and withdrew my scholarship. I didn't know what to do. I had taken my eyes off the ball with this idea of coming to the US to study, and I had one bad decision after the other, and I started to spiral out of control. I remember one time getting one of my classmates to get a window open while class was in session. I cut class, I picked up 3 mangoes. There are mangoes in Sri Lanka that are hard, that are not the species that you eat. And I threw them one after the other into the classroom while class was in session. Had a pretty good arm. 2 of the 3 mangoes nearly hit his teacher. He was furious because this was while class was in session. Found out that evening that I was in real trouble, that the teacher was really going to take me to task the next day. Went to bed wondering, what was I going to do? The next morning, I woke up, went into the kitchen, got some turmeric, and put it in the toilet bowl. And I told my mother, Amma, look, there's something wrong with my stomach. She said, son, we better get you to the doctor. It was these kinds of things that I would do to stay away from school. Before you know it, I was 18 years old and dangerously close to flunking school. My dad comes to me and says, son, he was a military officer, you better stop wasting your time and my money. You're going to work. A couple of months later, he had made a couple of phone calls. I started as a commodity broker at a leading brokering house in Colombo. Being a fast talker, I did pretty good selling at the rostrum, selling rubber and sundry produce. And slowly but surely, I was starting to create some meaning and some shape, starting to learn responsibility, and really start to get going in the right direction. Unfortunately, in July of 1983, when I was 20 years old, the 9/11 of Sri Lanka happened. There was a really bad communal riot in Sri Lanka, and the streets were ablaze with fire. There was looting, there was murders, there was innocent people who were losing their lives. And I stood there horrified, realizing that these plans that I had were not going to work out anymore. It was time for a course correction. I got to work. I went on and got my passport. I did my English, I think English proficiency, it's called the TOEFL. And then I went to night school. I started to go to night school to get a diploma in business administration. 9 subjects. 8 of them I started to do pretty good at. The one that I struggled in was accounting, but with my shifty eyes, I made sure that I copied from the guy next to me, and I passed my accounting class. The next thing I did, I went to the American Embassy and did some research and found out about 25 universities that I was going to write to be able to get admission. So here we go. I write to these universities. I had just set myself up for failure. I got letter after letter telling me, either your grades were not good enough or it cost a lot of money. Closed door after closed door. It was time for a Hail Mary. I went back and thought about the faith that I had. I trusted in God, I believed in God, and I started to pray, and I said, God, if only somebody would come from the US and meet me, they would really get an understanding of who I am and open a door for me to go to the US. Within a few months, there was an American couple that came to Sri Lanka. They had dinner with my parents, I'm sure in a setting like this, and ended up wanting to meet me. Make a long story short, I had the opportunity to meet with them. This couple was in Sri Lanka during the summer. The summer, as you know it, they were working for the United Nations, but their real job was they were Vice President of Academic Affairs. The gentleman was the Vice President of Academic Affairs, and his wife were there, and they met me, and they said, Samuel, we would love for you to come and live with us and go to school. Wow, an open door. Not so soon, because my family did not have the money that I needed in order to pay for tuition. My mother stepped up. I brought with me this 22-carat gold necklace. In my mother tongue, it's called a thali. It is what my father would have used to have solemnized the wedding day with my mother. So she would have got an engagement ring, like all of you would have got an engagement ring when you got engaged. But this was what she got around her neck when my father married her. We were people with modest belongings. You know where this thing's going, right? She sold this thali and gave the money to me so that I might go to a community college. She didn't stop at that. She applied and got a job teaching English in another country, in the Middle East, in the country of Oman. She went to Oman to teach little girls English. Here she was, a hurdler, a high jumper. She was the Julie Andrews of Sri Lanka. She grew up loving Sound of Music and had a crush on Christopher Plummer. Here's this woman who decided to go away to teach, leaving my father and my youngest brother, having this whole separation for 4 years, that I might go to a community college and go to school. Having grown up somewhat irresponsible and reckless, this really got my attention. I get to the community college, there was a Kathy McGarrett there. She taught me accounting 100. I told you that I hadn't done well in accounting. I started to get my debits and my credits right. I understood the difference between the income statement and the balance sheet. Even though this class did not count towards college credit, she had set me up for success. That was Dave Smith, who was my accounting 101 and accounting 102 teacher. He actually wanted me to study accounting because he thought that I had done so well. What was not to love about Dave Smith? This guy, he drove not one, but 2 sports cars to work, a red Corvette and a black Pontiac. The speaker this morning was talking about being from Kalamazoo, Michigan. We were about an hour away from that, right? Not too far from the automotive capital of the world. And then there was Mark Ulseth. I used to play ping pong with him during break time. He was the registrar. He helped me transfer these credits that I had done in Sri Lanka into this community college, where I went from being a second semester freshman to needing 4 credit hours to be able to graduate with an associate degree in business. I got my associate's degree, and I transferred to Oral Roberts University. There was an international student advisor there. Her name was Laurie Origidam. She came through with an international student scholarship and grade point, and one for my grade point average. I think I was at a 3.5 at that point. So these were the kinds of things that it took in order for me to get through school. I eventually graduated with a degree in marketing, so I was able to finish in 3 years. I got hired by a company called Cardone Industries in Philadelphia, for whom I worked for 12 years. I became their vice president of procurement and supply and ran their largest business unit. When I left them, I did some consulting for a while. And after about 20 years in corporate America, I decided the people, the places, and the experiences enabled me to start Parts Life. I started Parts Life in the year 2007. For those of you who remember, 2007 was not only a tough time in our nation's economy, but there was also a global recession going on. We persevered for about 3 years and eventually got Parts Life to the point where it started to stabilize and become what it is today. Today, we are on many very well-known weapon systems. So our job is, what we do is we create legacy parts for expensive and mission-critical assets, many of which are older. Many of them are older than me, like the B-52 bomber, the Aegis weapon system, the DDG destroyer. We have some components on an aircraft carrier. The U.S. Navy, which is the most powerful Navy in the world, is one of our customers. The kinds of things that enabled me to start Parts Life, I decided to put together in what I'm calling the recipe for successful entrepreneurship and stewardship. I created this as a way for me to be able to pass on the things that I learned and the things that I have done in order to create success at Parts Life. I would have this for sale later on if you have a need for it. But I want to go over a couple of the things that I talk about. One is start with what you have. I think the speaker this morning also talked a bit about it. Start with what you have, right? And I can remember when I started Parts Life, I didn't have a plant, didn't have the capacity, the capabilities, the certifications that I would need in order to sell the type of DoD customer. But I put all of the processes and procedures that I was going to use in order to do what I was going to do, and I put that into a black 3-ring binder, and I presented it with so much confidence. You know what? I got the order. It's extremely important in entrepreneurship to start with what you have. And if you look at people, whether they are in the Bible, like Abraham and Moses and David and Esther, or whether you look at people in our history, whether it was Abraham Lincoln, whether it was Winston Churchill, Martin Luther King, our current president Barack Obama, these are people who have used what it is in front of them, what they have had in front of them to be able to affect the change that is required. My second ingredient that I'd like to talk about is creativity before capital. We heard the speaker this morning talk about the fact that there's always capital available. And we know that it takes money in order to run a business. But it's important to be able to apply creativity to that process. In fact, the more constraints there are, the more creative one needs to be. And so it's important. You know, a lot of people, in fact, my boss used to tell me, my leader used to tell me, Sam, it's not a money problem, it's an idea problem. It's extremely important for us to apply ourselves in that way. I talk in terms of knowing your business, knowing your customer and knowing your customer's customer, knowing your suppliers and your supplier's suppliers, knowing your quality requirements in the marketplace. I teach quality to every single member of my team because it is extremely important to understand what those requirements are. It's important to understand your stakeholders, whether it's a bank, whether it is the government officials around you, extremely important to know those kinds of things. My mother used to say, know it like you know the dirt under your fingernails. A bit of a gruesome example, right, at lunch, but something that we can all remember. I would also like to share with you the last ingredient, the ingredient of gratitude. Entrepreneurship is a team sport, and it takes a lot of people in order to be able to create success. And it's just important for us to be able to say thank you. Thank you to our customers, thank you to our employees, thank you to the people who helped get you there. Because it is those kinds of things that kind of bind you in the loyalty and the favor that you need in order to continue to be able to do what you do. As I bring this thing to a close, I would like to thank the people in the community college who gave me an opportunity to be able to get that leg up. One thing I forgot to mention was that as an international student, I was not able to work outside the school. But there was an instructor who allowed me to use the automotive shop so that I could set up and wash cars on Friday afternoons of the instructors and the administrators. And wash cars I did. I needed that little pocket money, you know, to do my laundry in town, and also to get those chocolate eclairs at Dunkin' Donuts. I love those chocolate eclairs. I realize I can't partake of that today, but when I was younger, man, I looked forward to them. I would like to say thank you to the mentors and leaders who taught me. I would like to thank the Parts Life team, because it is because of what they do that has given me the platform to be able to share with you today. We go to work every day in order to defend freedom by taking care of the US warfighter and also the US taxpayer. It's extremely important that we do both. I believe in being able to walk and chew gum at the same time. I would like to say thank you to my parents. I did not learn about entrepreneurship at home. Profit, in fact, was a bad word in my home. My father, as I told you, was a fairly strict military officer. My mother was a school teacher, so it was not regarding profit. But I have to tell you, I had a front row seat in what it took in stewardship and sacrifice. I also want you to know that one of the first things I did when I got my job was to go out and replace that thali for my mother. My father also. My father also had a hand in that. He didn't want me to do that by myself, but we got together and did that. I want to thank you for being here so that you can be inspired and more about entrepreneurship, so that you could go back to those community colleges and be able to instruct and inspire those students that come to school there. On your table, I have a coin. I created this coin thinking of you. I wanted to give this to you as a challenge coin so that you can remember why, let me say that one more time, why it is that you do what you do. Because there is that 18-year-old young person who decided to stay close to home and go to that community college, just like that familiar, warm blanket that they have. Or a 22 or a 23-year-old like me who thought, higher education is not for me. They went on their way, and all of a sudden, there is a need for a course correction. or that middle-aged person who lost their job and are finding themselves back in school in being able to reposition and repurpose themselves so that they can get back into the job market. For all of those people, they are counting on you being that steward, whether it is your time, whether it is your ability, whether it is your position, and all of those things that you possess. And so this is my gift to you. Thank you, and God bless.